Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OWASP DevSlop Show. Today's episode is called Top 10 CI/CD Risks, and we are joined by Daniel Krivalevich and Omer Gil of Ccd Security to discuss them. Welcome to the show. Oh, but first, a message from our sponsor, Datadog.
Datadog's cloud security platform detects threats in real time across your full stream of ingested data. You can easily get started with default detection rules that map to the MITRE ATT&CK framework and other compliance standards. For more flexibility, you can write custom rules right in the UI, no query language required. The cloud security platform also tracks your compliance posture alongside other security threats. And expert-built dashboards offer immediate visibility into threats and trends. 500 plus out-of-the-box integrations give you security insights in minutes. You can now view and correlate all your data in a unified platform that brings together DevOps and security teams. Sign up for a free trial of Datadog today and receive free swag.
All right, Omer and Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here.
So as you know, OWASP loves a top 10 list. So we are very excited to talk about another top 10 list here.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, I guess we'll begin with a short intro of ourselves and Ccd Security, and then we'll dive right into the top 10. So I'm Daniel. I'm the CTO and one of the founders at Ccd Security. Spent my entire career doing various enterprise security positions. Began my career, just like many Israelis, in the army, in the Israeli NSA 8200, and then did various application enterprise security positions. In my last position, I spent 4 years at Cicd, which is an incident response company in Israel, leading the application and cloud security discipline. And been with Ccd since the Ccd journey began for the last year and a half as the company CTO.
And my name is Omer Gil. Today I lead research at Ccd Security. I have a rich background of application security and cloud security. In my last role, I worked in a company named Magic Leap for a few years. Led the cloud security team there. And a few years of penetration testing and research. A few years ago, I released the web cache deception attack vector, which I also talked about in a few conferences. And we're here today to talk about a project that we worked on for many months, the top 10 Ccd security risks.
Great. Cool. So how'd you guys come up with the idea for a top 10 CID security risks? I mean, there's a lot of top 10 lists out there, but did you have trouble like finding 10, or was it very obvious that you could have had a top 20 here?
So I think from the day our journey at Ccd Security began, and even before that, a lot of what we do, and one of the primary reasons which we began our journey at Ccd was around how the AppSec domain has changed, and the types of challenges that defenders, AppSec practitioners are facing today are far beyond just finding solutions for securing the code, finding security flaws and security misconfigurations in the code. And what we identified is that security practitioners are struggling to find effective methods to identify the different risks in the CI/CD domain, and to understand what is the weight and significance of the CI/CD or the engineering ecosystem within the organization's attack surface. In parallel, what we saw is that different types of attackers and adversaries at various levels of sophistication began targeting CI/CD environments, engineering systems and processes, and so so this is really what drove us to build the top 10. That understanding that it's one of the biggest gaps that AppSec practitioners have today. Is not only about building a technology that will allow them to address this new category of risks dealing with the posture of CI/CD systems, environments, and processes, but also knowledge and methodologies that will allow them to identify and detect and prioritize and talk about risks within this very complex technical ecosystem that's evolved rapidly over the last 2-3 years. And we'll talk about it later. We prepared some slides, but we went through a very rigorous process of mapping a lot of resources and publications and reading a lot about the anatomy of different hacks and CI/CD security incidents, together with many CI/CD environments that we've analyzed, as well as a lot of discussions that we've had with industry experts, and we fused all that together to build those risks. And this is a domain that, like I said, it's been growing rapidly over the past 2-3 years. So it wasn't really hard to identify and to find the top 10, but there was a challenge in identifying what are those top 10 out of all the potential risks, and distilling the impact and the nature and the characteristics of the risks and how to mitigate them. So yeah, it was a long process.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, it's great though to try to consolidate this in this list, because there are certain people that just don't realize how broad this attack surface has become. And so I think trying to give people this easy to read list helps people understand and raises that awareness. Cool. Let's get into it.
Yeah, sure. So we presented ourselves already. So we began thinking or working towards the top 10 CI/CD security risk after SolarWinds. SolarWinds happened in December 2020. That was when the publications about the breach started circulating, and obviously SolarWinds went on to become one of the biggest supply chain attacks in history, with the SolarWinds build system compromised and the compromised system used to spread malware to about 18,000 victim organizations. And of course, it wasn't just us, but the entire world started asking themselves questions. Some of the questions were around how to prevent the organization from becoming a victim of the next big supply chain attack. But there was an equally important set of questions around how to prevent the organization from becoming the next SolarWinds. So questions around how secure the build system is, how far someone can go with access to the build system or environment, and what type of capabilities does the organization have to detect this type of an attack. And so this is what kind of sparked the conversations for us about CI/CD security and a need to build an initiative like the top 10 CI/CD security risks alongside the technology that we're building at Cider. And I think it makes sense, before diving into the actual project, to talk about what is CI/CD security, what does that term actually mean? And the best way to understand this is to begin with understanding the evolution of the engineering ecosystem over the last few years. And so today's reality is that the engineering train is moving faster and faster. Releases are conducted on a daily or hourly or sometimes minutely basis. The stack that's used for development is much more diverse and dynamic and bigger. It's much easier today. It takes a much shorter time to adopt a new technology or framework. And of course, it's not only our applications that are codified, but our entire data centers and infrastructure are codified and managed with configuration files that are stored in our source control systems with infrastructure as code. And then we're seeing, of course, a lot of manual processes that are deprecated in favor of automations that make up for the continuous integration and continuous delivery processes. And then the building blocks that comprise the engineering ecosystem that has grown and evolved are the different systems within this ecosystem, and of course, different types of objects and processes that are being moved around all the way from source control or from the engineer's workstation to production, with, of course, a fusion of human collaborators and applications and services and secrets, tokens, programmatic credentials, as well as third parties that are spread throughout this environment. So these are the types of building blocks that we have in the engineering ecosystem. But the challenge for defenders that are tasked with protecting this is that what we're seeing now isn't really what reality looks like, but rather something more along the lines of this. Even in a small startup, but definitely in a big organization, the ecosystem, that is the engineering environment, is very big, chaotic. It's a high entropy environment that's always growing and expanding and evolving. And of course, each and every one of these building blocks is potentially connected to one or more of the others. And then when we look at the security angle of this and the complexities that we face as defenders trying to protect this, so the complexities have to do with how deeply familiar we need to be with the inner workings of the engineering ecosystem in order to properly understand what are the different risks that we're facing and what types of security measures are required. So we need to, of course, map the different systems that comprise the engineering ecosystem, but then we need to know what repos exist in source control, what languages and frameworks are used, what pipelines are running inside our CI and CD systems, how does CI pipelines connect back to source control systems to fetch code, what type of secrets and programmatic tokens we have in our CI and CD systems, what is their scope, what is the level of permission that they have, and then of course, how does CI and CD pipelines ultimately take code, build, test it, package it, upload artifacts to artifact repositories, container images to container registries, and then of course the most important question, which pipelines, which processes ultimately are responsible for deploying workloads to production, using what method of access, using what credentials. Once we understand all of this, we of course need to know which human collaborators and which applications and services can access these different building blocks. And it was important for us to go to this level of depth when describing this ecosystem, because ultimately this is what our attack surface looks like. This is how, this is where the connection to the attacker's perspective and the risk perspectives comes in, because this is the way an attacker analyzes our environments and tries to understand the different paths and vectors through which it can be abused. And then for us as defenders, if we want to be able to effectively derive the risks within the CI/CD ecosystem, this is the level of understanding and familiarity that we need to have with the inner workings of the engineering ecosystem and the way it looks under the hood. And so
Quick question on that previous slide. Do you see this more as a complexity problem that you need to reduce the complexity, or should that be like a goal of an organization, or is it really just to inventory, map, and understand the complexity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we spent our entire careers working alongside engineers as AppSec practitioners, and ultimately, I think what organizations have realized today is that security needs to be an enabler and a guardrail, much more than it needs to be an entity that tries to block or prevent or slow down engineering. Engineering needs to be able to operate freely and build applications in the way that best serves the application and the business. And then security needs to be there to provide those guardrails. It's often the case that even in organizations where security is a blocker and security is trying to force various controls and protocols that dictate what technologies can and cannot be used, many times it ends up being the reverse effect, where security is just bypassed and considered to be more of a nuisance, and a lot more friction is created between security and engineering. And then ultimately, engineering will bypass security and build the applications in the way that they believe it should be built, that serves the business the best way. But then when that happens, it's of course a lot slower with a lot more friction, and of course worse for the business. So our view is that whatever defenders are doing needs to be aimed at allowing security to be an enabler and allowing security to have the right knowledge and understanding in order to understand these complexities and respond in the most effective manner to those complexities.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess one just follow-up quick question. Do you see the complexity or the industry? I mean, obviously DevOps is a big thing. Infrastructure as code exploded. There's a lot of tools out there. Do you see this industry kind of consolidating in some way to make these pathways to production simpler? Or do you think it just is the opposite is going to happen? It's just going to get actually more complicated?
I think that we do see consolidation, but like for example, we see vendors that until recently only have source control management solutions to host your code base. And today they also have, I mean, at least all the big ones now today have solutions like CI solutions as part of the same vendor. And we see many organizations using both of them, like source control and CI by the same vendor. So we do see consolidation, but I think that we won't see it get so simple so fast, because this engineering ecosystem in most organizations are a bit more complex. They are relatively complicated, and it's not that easy to just consolidate everything into one vendor. First, I think that there's no one-stop shop for all of the needs that you have for your engineering ecosystem. And second, even for the source control in CI, just for an example, it's not that easy for an organization to migrate from a more older CI like Jenkins or Travis to a more modern one. It takes a lot of resources, lots of effort, and we keep seeing definitely for big organizations, but also for medium and smaller ones, we see that many of them have or use at least two different source control vendors and 2 or 3 CI system, and same for artifact registries and production environment. So eventually it's not, I mean, they try to consolidate sometimes, but it's always complex and it's always spread across different vendors.
Yeah.
All right, complexity is here to stay. We get it. Yeah.
I think there are going to be more advanced solutions that do more things, but I don't know how well it's going to affect the entropy of the environment, as long as the trend in the engineering ecosystem is such that products are built and designed to be B2D, business to developer, and developers look to work in places where they can be as free as possible to adopt and use whatever technology, again, serves the application and the business best. And so the trend for development is to develop fast and use more third parties, and to always be able to pick up the most advanced and novel technology and embed it right away. And as long as that's the reality, and I don't expect that reality to change, because it is doing such great things for engineering and for the world's ability to build good applications fast. As long as that's the trend, I don't expect there to be any changes in the complexity, at least not to the direction of being less complex.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense to me. I mean, it feels that is the direction we're headed. So, all right. So you could probably have a top 100 risk slide, or that could be the next project.
This is for next year. Yeah, exactly. So we kind of went through the process of how an attacker builds the attack surface and what are the different building blocks that comprise the engineering ecosystem and ultimately the attack surface. And then this is essentially what we mean when we use the term Cicd security. It's the process of building this visibility over our high entropy, chaotic engineering ecosystem, leveraging the visibility to map the different risks and attack paths within the ecosystem, and then taking this knowledge and applying it to build security controls around this entire ecosystem, all the way from code to deployment. So now that we know or we've established what CI/CD security means, I think it's important to talk about 2021, because 2021 was really a pivotal year for CI/CD security. In 2021, it was proven numerous times that attackers, even the most sophisticated attackers, are starting to put more and more focus and more emphasis on the engineering ecosystem. And I think the whole world grew to understand just how easy it is for an organization to be exposed to some of the most critical CI/CD security risks out there. I'll just go over a few examples. There are 5 examples out of many, many, many other examples which we've analyzed and seen. So we talked about SolarWinds. There was the CodeCov incident where thousands of organizations had their secrets stored as CI environment variables exposed. There was the PHP incident where PHP had their Git infrastructure compromised, and organizations using PHP were running PHP bundled with malware. Dependency confusion, where Apple, Microsoft, many other big companies were at the risk of having malicious code executed on critical CI systems. And then late 2021, there was a batch of incidents having to do with the Koa RC UA parser packages. These were some of the most popular packages in NPM, with millions of weekly downloads each that were compromised and infected with malware. And so putting all that together, the evolution of the engineering ecosystem, the expansion of the attack surface, the redefinition of the attack surface of the organization with, much more significant weight of CI/CD systems, environments, and processes, is what led us to take on the top 10 CI/CD security risks initiative, which we carried out for a period of 9-10 months. Let's dive right into it.
So as we said in the beginning of this stream, Daniel and I have been working with many organizations for many years on improving their security posture. We've done it as consultants and also in-house as security engineers, architects. What we've seen working with all these organizations is that, like in many cases, they had high impact flaws and possible attack vectors in their engineering ecosystem, which is one of the main challenges that we at Cider try to solve today using our platform. But like the gaps we saw are not just around these lack of technologies. Another thing that we found that was common to all of these organizations was the lack of knowledge and methodologies of how to protect their Cicd ecosystem, and even more importantly, it was hard for them to understand what risks they should protect against. So from day one here at Cider, we knew that we knew that like optimizing the state of Cicd security, it should be around a strong technology, but it's definitely not enough. We understood that we want to contribute these knowledge and methodologies that we have, and we learn and research to the InfoSec and dev communities to assist defenders challenge this evolving attack surface around engineering environments. And this huge gap led us to creating the top 10 Cicd Security Risks initiative. We worked on this project for around 9 months. And this project eventually is a long document detailing the top 10 security risks in Cicd environments. You can see it now on the screen. The initiative, it's the final result is a 40-page PDF. We can also be consumed through our website and through our GitHub project. I'll show it in a moment. And the initiative is the result of three main sources. First is the extensive research that we mentioned in the beginning of this talk, and analysis that we've done based on our experience working with many organizations. Second is the discussions that we made with some of the industry's top experts, and we'll see their names in a moment. And third is publications of incidents and attack techniques within the Cicd domain, which will demonstrate, we'll give a few case studies as part of this talk in a few minutes. Now, all the top 10 risks are well detailed. It's not just like the titles of each risk. They are well detailed in the release document that you can find on the website. You can see it now on the slide. In each risk is built of a definition, a technical description, the impact on the environment, suggested recommendations, and also references to a notable incident that were made possible due to the existence of these risks. You can find everything on our website. I can show it now at cybersecurity.io. Here you can find all of the top 10 risks along with the details. They are each one of them is very detailed. Sometimes you'll find some code snippets, for example, some additional information. You can also reach out to the Cybersecurity Research GitHub organization, where you can suggest your own additions to the document and also see all of the information here, all of the data. You can also download the PDF directly if it's more easy for you to consume. Okay, so I'll move on. And after all of these teasers, all of our discussions by now, here's the top 10 Cicd security risks. You can see it now on the slide. Each one has its own ID, from the first one, insufficient flow control mechanisms, to insufficient logging and visibility. And they are sorted by the combination of their impact and probability. Now, as we just mentioned, we mentioned it a few times in the stream. It was important for us to collaborate with security professionals on this project, and to gather feedback from both bigger and smaller companies and from different roles like CISOs and technical engineers. So we reached out to some people that we know and some people that we haven't known in person until that moment. And they were all excited to take part in this project. And they provided invaluable feedback and additions. So I'd like to take this opportunity and thank all of them. You can see their names now on the screen. People from Rapid7, Mozilla, Twitter, Atlassian, Databricks, Netflix, Mercury, Relativity. As I said, also CISOs and technical engineers. So I'd really like to thank everyone for taking part of this project. So we've talked a lot by now, and before we list it, as we said, we've analyzed lots of breaches and environments, and we had many discussions, and we thought a lot, like, what is the best way to explain the top 10 risks in a talk like this, when everyone is watching in a stream over remotely over YouTube or Twitch. And the best idea that we came up with was to simply open the 40-page PDF and read it to you. So I'm kidding. What we decided to do is to deep dive into 2 or maybe more case studies of known breaches in the Cicd security domain for recent years that we analyzed as part of our research for creating this project. And in each case study, we'll break down the anatomy of the incident and distill the risks out of the top 10 that made it possible to occur. We have many breaches that we've analyzed as part of our research for this project. Now we can deep dive into 2 of them, and if you want, we can deep dive into more. We have 5 already, so we can do whatever the attendees ask for. And any questions before we talk about these 2 case studies?
Currently, just a comment on, I like how you listed them in the report, being the top 10 Cicd, seeing there are a few items of access control. Would love to get an understanding of the differences between them. So maybe some focus areas on access controls around the case studies, in the case studies?
Yeah, so as part of the case studies, we're gonna present the case study. We're gonna present what happened in the breach, and then we're gonna talk about the relevant risks out of the top 10 that made it possible, and we'll present each risk separately, so it'll be easier to understand like the differences between them and the main risks that each of them holds in it.
Yeah, I think just generally speaking, obviously, this is a whole new domain and a whole new way of thinking, and it's a lot to take in. And obviously, reading the 40-page PDF is, it took us 9 months to write, and it should be digested piece by piece. I think we work with dozens of organizations on a day-to-day basis, and we experience the struggles and the difficulties that organizations have adapting to these new realities and the new flavor of challenges that they need to deal with. And I think what we're going to do now is just really it's mainly the main purpose is not to take the case studies that we display and try to extrapolate measures for your organization out of them, but rather have a better understanding of this new way of thinking and what this new category of challenges looks like, to be able to then take the top 10 back to the organization and begin the journey towards optimizing the resilience of the CI/CD systems, environments, processes in the organization. So let's begin with the first case study. The first case study is the PHP Git infrastructure compromise. It happened in March 2021. What happened was that an attacker was able to gain access to the self-hosted Git infrastructure that was used at the time by PHP. So the attacker created a new version of PHP and then uploaded to the Git server while signing off on the commits as if they came from legitimate PHP maintainers. At the time, PHP did not have any requirement for additional process or review prior to merging new versions of PHP. So the attackers, with the access that they had, were able to modify the actual production version of PHP that's being pulled by consumers. And so for a short while, what happened was there was a malicious version of PHP that's being distributed to consumers that allows remote command execution on any website running the hijacked version of PHP. What we did with these case studies, and as Omer said, we have the 5 case studies that we actually built for the presentation that we had in RSA about the top 10. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So what we did is for each case study, we analyzed the different risks out of the top 10 that were relevant, that were exploited by the attackers in this scenario. So what we're going to do now is go over the 4 primary risks that were exploited in this scenario, the PHP Git infrastructure compromise. The first one is risk number 1 in the top 10 project. It's insufficient flow control mechanisms. And it refers to an attacker's ability to abuse CI/CD misconfigurations to single-handedly push malicious code or artifacts down the pipeline without, of course, a need for additional approval or review. Of course, what happened in PHP's case is that, like we said, PHP didn't have any type of process for preventing direct, unreviewed changes to the PHP source code. And that was what allowed the production version of PHP to be modified. The second risk is risk number 7 in the top 10 project, insecure system configuration. This risk abuses flaws in the security settings, configuration, hardening of the different systems across the pipeline, the source control, the CI, the artifact repository, so on and so forth. These flaws typically create low-hanging fruits for attackers that are then used to penetrate and to move laterally within the CI/CD environment. what happened in our case was that PHP was managed using self-hosted Git infrastructure that did not have sufficient security hardening, and it was compromised, breached and compromised during the incident. Of course, PHP replaced the self-hosted Git infrastructure immediately after the incident in favor of a SaaS GitHub that is still using up until today.
Wait, just real quick on that. The compromise, it was compromising the self-hosted Git to then put in a commit that was merged without any sort of approval process. Is that like the attack path?
That's pretty much what happened.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So just maybe to elaborate on that, the artifacts that we used to understand what happened came from internal PHP communications that they published on their website. So of course, once this has happened, PHP notified all PHP users, and of course, the different PHP maintainers started discussing what had happened and what are the different measures that are required to respond to this incident and to also prepare for future incidents like that. And this is where we derived all the information that we're presenting to you here. So, risk number 9 out of the top 10 is called improper artifact integrity validation. And it allows an attacker with access to one of the systems in Cicd to push malicious code or artifacts down the pipeline in the guise of a legitimate artifact, because there is no validation for the integrity of the artifacts. In PHP, what had happened was that signed commits mechanism, which is used to verify the author of each commit using a cryptographic signature, was not in use, which is ultimately what allowed attackers to masquerade as legitimate PHP maintainers, even though they did not have the private keys of the actual maintainers. And again, what we saw in those internal discussions between the PHP maintainers was the recommendation to begin using this mechanism to be more secure in the future. And then the last risk that is specific to what happened here is insufficient logging and visibility. This is risk number 10 in the top 10 project. And the risk allows malicious activities to be carried out within the Cicd environment without defenders having any correlating detective or investigative capabilities. Logging and visibility, generally speaking, is an important building block for any type of environment that is targeted by attackers, of course, Cicd included. But Omer and I, we saw again and again prior to Cider, during Cider, with pretty much all of the organizations that we worked with, even when it was with organizations that have a very mature security program, we witnessed again and again how many times visibility and monitoring and logging over Cicd did not exist. This, of course, was true also in relation to PHP, that were able to detect the breach only after the malicious commits had been made. And it was, of course, relevant to all of the case studies that we analyzed. So you know, generally speaking, it is worthy of going into specifics, but generally speaking, logging and visibility is an essential base layer for coping with any type of Cicd security risk or incident. It isn't a preventative control or measure, but you know, myself also coming from an incident response background, and Omer with some of the activities that he did in earlier stages in his career, we know how critical this measure is sometimes to prevent, detect, investigate, respond to an incident. So this is risk number 10, and I think we'll move on to the next case study unless anyone has questions.
No, I don't see any questions in the chat, but I guess, you know, these risks that you've identified, I guess, what year was this PHP incident? A couple of years ago?
That was the pivotal year.
All All right, never mind. Okay. I was just wondering, like, if any of this infrastructure improves as these things. I mean, you said that they moved away from self-hosted Git, but you know, managing some of these other risks, I don't know. Do you see the onus is on like the tool provider, or do you see this like how do you solve this problem? Like, if you're dealing with tools that just don't have the ability to log like that, what do you do?
So I think it's a combination of so I would say that one of the big problems is that the focus of the industry is not directed towards this area, and this has many manifestations. One of the manifestations is that defenders aren't necessarily asking the right questions, or aren't necessarily diligent enough in making sure that all those systems are secure, and the security mindset is applied to those environments. In many organizations, the engineering ecosystem isn't a big part, or isn't a part at all of the scope of governance of security organizations, or hasn't been up until a year or two ago. The focus was primarily around the security of the code, the artifacts being shipped through the pipeline, but not the posture and the resilience of the different systems and processes of the pipeline. And then, because this hasn't been a big part of the types of questions defenders were asking themselves, it was also not a big part of what defenders were requiring vendors to provide. Vendors within the CI/CD space were not required to prove that they're secure and they have all the security controls and measures, because it wasn't part of the obstacles that they needed to overcome on their way into the organization. It wasn't part of the security due diligence process. But obviously now this has changed. Defenders are beginning to ask those questions. The top 10 CI/CD Security Risk Initiative has been a great reference for defenders in their journey to ramp up their capabilities around this. And vendors are starting to become a lot more diligent about securing these environments and the solutions that they're providing. But the journey is still early.
Yeah, just real quick on someone from the chat named Ghost is asking what needed to be logged here. Can you elaborate specifically? Or what do you think would have been helpful here to have this not have been an issue?
So I'm not sure if we should talk about PHP specifically, because we don't have all of the needed details for the PHP incident. We only have the information that was discovered as part of their formal disclosure, but obviously it didn't contain all of the details that we would like to hear about. But like in general, we can start from the basic stuff that any system should have. Like any security team should have the visibility to any audit operation that to have an audit for any system involved in the Cicd. I would like to know who uses the system and what permissions they have, and if they use these permissions or not. If someone is performing any sensitive operation, I would like to know about it. If there's a sequence of operations done in the Cicd, not necessarily in one system, but in more than one system, like in a few of them, that I can correlate and identify malicious activity, I would like to know about it. Just as an example, which is a relatively simple one. Let's say that you have branch protection rules, but they are removed, and then some malicious code is being pushed directly to a sensitive branch, which then triggers a production pipeline. And this code or artifacts are flowed until they reach production, and then these branch protection rules are put back in place. Just an example for an attack vector that I would like to have the ability to identify. Now, most of these, this whole kill chain is built of simple and different operations that I would need to have, as a security engineer, I would need to have access to. But most security engineers have zero visibility to these operations in their day-to-day. This is part of what we try to shed light on. It's part of this.
I think also, these are general security principles that what we're trying to do is apply them to the day-to-day and to the ecosystem of engineering. But the general security principle is that every type of preventative control should have a correlating visibility measure. So for example, if one of the controls that you've built in the organization is using signed commits, then you should monitor, you should have the appropriate artifacts to then alert and monitor on any commit that was made without being signed. If you have a requirement for anything being pushed, any new version or any change in the application requiring multiple reviewers, then we should be on the lookout and have the appropriate artifacts to be on the lookout for any change that was made without undergoing multiple reviewers.
Yeah, totally. Cool. I think there's some excitement from the audience to get into some of the other 6 risks that we haven't gotten into yet. So I guess that's a good cue to move on.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so the second case study is the Stack Overflow breach. One day in May 2019, just a bit before 2021, the Stack Overflow team was alerted by members of its Stack Exchange community that a user that nobody knew before was suddenly granted with high privileges over the system. And they started investigating what happened and discovered a much deeper incident, which even led to leakage of their source code. Now, it all began with attackers from the internet, anonymous attackers from the internet, who successfully gained access to what the company names the dev tier, which is an internal environment which is used mainly for testing. The attackers tried using various functionalities through the dev tier and eventually obtained a service account, the password of a service account, which was stored in clear text in one of the configuration files. This account was used to programmatically access Cicd, which was the CI solution used by Stack Overflow. But even though it wasn't in use anymore, this service account, its credentials were still valid. And not only that, the attackers could access Cicd from the internet and logging with this account, even though it was never used for an interactive login before. Now, when the attackers logged into Cicd, this account was automatically granted with admin permissions over the system. There was a security misconfiguration in Cicd around role management, and any new user that logged in by default got admin privileges on the Cicd instance. Now, the attackers really wanted to access the source code of Stack Overflow, so they tried to log in to their GitHub organization, which was a self-managed GitHub Enterprise instance, which was also accessible from the internet. But this attempt failed as 2FA was enforced in this GitHub organization. Now, using the Cicd admin privileges that the attackers just received, they stole GitHub SSH key from the system used to access GitHub. And since SSH keys are not restricted with 2FA, the attackers were able to use it to access the GitHub repos and to leak their source code. And this source code also contained plain text secrets to other systems. And that's the Stack Overflow breach from 3 years ago. So let's see what relevant risks led this breach to exist. So we have inadequate identity and access management, insufficient credential hygiene, and insecure system configuration. Let's have a look at them. So risk number 2 on the list is inadequate identity and access management, which refers to poorly managed identities, both human and programmatic, across the different systems in the engineering ecosystem. Now, in the case of Stack Overflow, there were various issues around around identity and access management. First, there was the service account that they put their hands on, which was inactive but was never revoked, so they were able to use it. Another thing is that the service account was used for was used in the past for programmatic access, but the attackers were able to log in interactively using this user.
And that was just a limitation of Cicd. That was just like some way that was supposed to work. There was no misconfiguration there. That was intended design, correct?
No, the issue wasn't an inherent issue in Cicd. So it's usually around configurations of these instances. All of these source controls and CI solutions, they have a lot of different configurations that can be set. They are not necessarily security related directly. Sometimes they're not around security, but they impact security if they are done incorrectly. And we especially see it in a self-hosted system. They are more flexible for users. There are many different configurations that can be done, and sometimes they are done insecurely. That was the case in Cicd.
Okay.
I think one of the challenges, and we're seeing this pretty much in every organization that we work with, is that these systems are so complex in terms of the configurations and the identities that exist there. A lot of human identities, but even more programmatic identities. CI/CD is a programmatic ecosystem much more than it is a human ecosystem. And then for many, many years, all the configurations and settings and management of these identities were not done with the security mindset applied, as opposed to cloud security or cloud environments or Active Directory environments or anything having to do with the endpoint, where the amount of mileage that we've done as a security industry, there's about 10-15 years of securing these environments. And then today the reality is that all of these configurations in the majority of organizations are applied with a very strong security mindset. But unfortunately with Cicd, that's not the case. This is where we will be 5, 6, 7 years from today with the help of these types of initiatives. But in the majority of the cases, this is what CI/CD environments looks like.
Yeah, a lot of complexity, a lot of gotchas swimming all around this ecosystem here.
Yeah, definitely. And so another thing that we saw in this breach around identity and access management is the fact that admin privileges were given by default to any new user accessing the system. Again, there was a misconfiguration around role management, not an inherent issue in Cicd, but this is something that was caused due to a misconfiguration eventually that was done by Stack Overflow. And it's also important to mention that even though 2FA was enforced in the GitHub organization, which was the thing that prevented the attackers from accessing the code base in the beginning of the attack, it wasn't enough to stop the attack from happening. So it's sometimes something that many defenders think that, okay, my source control is protected, right? I have all of my users are required with 2FA, and I have a bunch of other security mechanisms, but they are in most cases not enough on their own to protect your instances, environments, assets, and we can see it clearly in this case that these things are sometimes overlooked. You think that no one can access your system without 2FA, but it's not applied to all types of authentication. And when security is not aware of that, it exposes their environments to attacks like we see here. Okay, we can move on to the next risk, which was relevant to this breach, which is risk number 6, insufficient credential hygiene. Insufficient credential hygiene is around obtaining and abusing secrets and tokens spread throughout the CI/CD ecosystem due to poor access controls, insecure secret management, and overly permissive credentials. Now, the risk is often thought of only in terms of secrets in the source code, but secrets are spread across all of the different CI/CD systems, like the CI, CD, container images, and the hygiene should be maintained in all of them. Now, in the case of the Stack Overflow breach, we've seen that static credentials were stored in clear text in the code base, in the build system, in the configuration files. And once the attackers got access to each of these systems, they could easily leverage this access to move laterally to other systems. Also, we see a lot that now eventually engineering systems like the source control, the CI, the CD, which communicate with each other, eventually they ship their code and artifacts to production. All of them host or store credentials which have very high permissions to production eventually. And once the attackers put their hands on one of these credentials, which could be to production environments or to the different organizations, to different organization systems, the impact could be very, very high because of the nature of this ecosystem. And last risk, which is relevant to this breach, which is something that Daniel just covered, the insecure system configuration, because the self-hosted GitHub and Cicd instances were accessible from the internet, even though it wasn't required, and it allowed the attackers to target them and attack them more easily. They could access these systems, authenticate, and steal the assets stored inside far more easily.
Yeah, and I think that was one of their main conclusions after also they put both systems internally.
Yep. So that's about it regarding the Stack Overflow breach. We can answer any question, or we can also say that, there are many other breaches that we've analyzed. We also have some slides in this talk. We can talk about it for days, but eventually we can see in each breach, we can see at least 2, 3, sometimes more different risks out of the top 10 that made it possible to occur. And we keep see these risks repeat themselves in all of these incidents.
Chris Jones is asking, do you happen to have any frequency data on each risk from your study? I guess, are there more frequent risk items that are triggered in your case studies, or I guess more broadly in the industry? Is the top 10 like by frequency, or is it by severity?
Yeah. So I think the risks are sorted by a combination of the impact of each risk, and then also the likelihood of the risk being exploited, with, of course, the likelihood being affected very much by how prevalent and widely used the controls and the systems that the risk is referring to are out there. So yeah, I think the order of the risk does imply, in our view, the urgency or the importance, the order of importance of dealing with the risks in the organization.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, I think we could move on. Some comments around how identity and access management are generally disregarded risks or need to be more highly regarded risks. So just some comments around how access control is hard and needs more attention. But,
yeah, definitely. I agree. And like I said, like we experience this with pretty much every single organization using our platform. The journey to building robust and secure CI/CD environments is long, but it begins with baby steps, and we do believe that even though this journey is long, there are many measures. There's the Pareto rule. There are many measures that can be taken that solve the majority of the problem in the majority of organizations. And yeah, I think Omer mentioned this, but inside the top 10 document, we have for each risk a set of recommended measures that we recommend organizations to take to be better prepared for this type of risk. And of course, it goes without saying that if anyone here has any specific questions or thoughts about the different risks and measures and controls, it is possible to comment and suggest modifications to the actual document in GitHub. And of course, you feel free to reach out to us. These are the discussions that we like having the most. So you're more than welcome to do that. We have 3 more scenarios that we're not going to cover here, I think, just because there's not enough time. But it was part of what we analyzed, and of course what we covered in the talk at RSA. So we had the CodeCov incident, where thousands of organizations had secrets stored as environment variables exfiltrated. We had the bug in Travis that exposed sensitive secrets stored in the Travis CI to pull requests coming from forks. And then we had the famous dependency confusion, which wasn't made public due to a hack, but rather due to a blog published by White Hat, Alex Bielsan, in February 2021. But we don't really know the extent to which it had affected organizations prior to the publication. But I think everyone doing application security was familiar with dependency confusion. It had a massive effect on the industry, and it was a very high magnitude vector. So I think it's now a good time to talk about CI/CD GOAT.
Yeah. So
what is CI/CD GOAT?
Oh, that's a great question. So for those of you who are not less familiar with the term GOAT, it's an unofficial term that relates to a deliberately vulnerable system or environment with the purpose of have a chance to practice, to have a practical attempts to hack the environment or system. We have GOATs today for web applications and for infrastructure as code and for cloud. Many cool open sources that individuals or companies released in the past that allow you to practice actual hacks and attacks against these environments. And as you know, we knew that knowledge and methodologies is something that security teams and people are lack if they want to know how to protect their CI/CD ecosystem, engineering ecosystem. They need to have the knowledge and methodologies for that. But then we thought that it's not enough to just understand the methodologies on how to protect your ecosystem. So you all understand what the risks are, but there's nothing like attempting to hack your environments on your own. And what we wanted to do is to provide an environment or an infrastructure to practice all of the risks that you see in the top 10 security risks project. So you have the chance to practically test it on your own. You wanted people to have a full-blown CI/CD environment where you can try and abuse identity management issues, identity and access management issues, and poison pipeline execution attacks. And if you read the document, you will see that auto-merge could be a problem, but there's nothing like bypassing auto-merge rules on your own in a real environment. And we know that most people would be probably afraid to try it on their own environment, so it will be harder for them to find the flaws before they practice it for the first time in a demo environment. So this is why we created the CI/CD GOAT. It's a full environment. I can show you the project on GitHub now. Built of a source control management system based on Git, which is linked with Jenkins CI. There's another Jenkins agent there. Local stack, which simulates AWS like a real cloud environment. There's another HTTP server which we use as part of the scenarios, and it's all managed. All the challenges are managed using the CDFD platform, which is a capture the flag platform to present and interact with the different challenges. This project was developed internally by the cybersecurity team. Both of us were working on it. Asik Reynolds security researcher on Cider led this initiative, and Rotem Bar, Yaron Vital from our team also took part in this. Today, the Cicd Goat has 10 different challenges around Cicd. You can see it here. You just access this platform. All this is internally. Everything is based on Docker. So you can just simply download and just run it in a few seconds or minutes, everything on your own laptop. So you have this CDFD platform where you can view all of the different challenges from easy to hard. You should probably start with the easy ones. Each of them has like the initial instructions of what you should do. You can use the different hints, and the purpose is to simply capture the flag. There's a flag which is hidden in somewhere in the CI/CD environment. Like there are different repos which are linked with different CI pipelines until they deploy code and artifacts to a simulated production environment. And you need to capture one flag. It could be a secret stored in Jenkins. It could be a secret stored in source control or in production. And eventually you need to capture it and put it in this platform. This is the source control with many repositories here. This is Jenkins, which is, again, associated with the source control. And it's mainly really fun. You can find all of the, if the hints weren't enough for you, you can find all of the solutions on the GitHub repository. I'm not gonna give any spoilers, so I won't show any real examples, but you're more than welcome to try it on your own. What I wanted to show in the solutions is that each of the challenges is based on at least one of the different risks in the top 10. So for example, risk number 1 is based on poison pipeline execution, PPE, which is risk number 4. And we have here another one, which is based on usage of third-party services and improper artifact integrity validation. So you can associate each of these challenges to the top 10 Cicd security risks. We plan once in a while to add some more challenges to this initiative. And you are more than welcome to add your own. This entire project is code-based. Meaning that even the Jenkins pipelines and the production environment and the Gitty, the source control management system, everything is configured as code. So it's very easy to contribute. And we invite you all to do that. And we've got some really great feedbacks on that. I mean, we know in person many security teams, and it's not just for security, right? It's also for DevOps and for software engineers and anyone who cares about Cicd and security. They all said that it was really fun first, which is the most important thing, and really inspiring. And we really like this project because we have the top 10 Cicd security risks document, which is very, which is very descriptive. But now we also have the Cicd Goat where you can also practice on your own all of these different risks, and we plan to add more and more in the near future. So that's about it for the Cicd Goat.
Yeah, it looks like a great project. I don't think there's quite anything like this out there where you can really dig into each one of these or really inspect these types of. It would be really hard to configure this on your own if you really wanted to do this. So it's great that you guys put this together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like I said, we one of the things we're passionate about the most is helping CI/CD environments be more secure, and obviously this is one of the reasons that we began Cider. Omer and I both been at Cider since day 0. But the problem, or one of the challenges that the world needs to overcome at this point in time, is not just about the technology, but also about, helping spark the right discussions and helping defenders, builders have the right vocabulary to have those discussions and to help security and engineering build more secure environments without compromising on the quality or the velocity of delivery. And so, the feedbacks that we've been receiving so far around both projects, around both the top 10 and the GOAT, is that they're very helpful in doing just that, in helping internal discussions within an organization, inside security teams, between security and engineering, between blue team and red teams, be focused on these places that ultimately help organizations become more secure and more prepared for this very new and novel category of risks.
Yeah, definitely. There's a comment from the audience, Chris Jones. Thank you very much for putting this all together. It really helps to have talking points with audit and senior management to show we're not the only ones, but don't want to be the next one either. So I think that exactly captures what you were just describing.
Yeah, happy to help, Chris. I think as far as the content that we've prepared today, that's pretty much it. We have a short list of takeaways or things to think about that we can present for a minute.
Sure.
So as far as applying the top 10 to our day-to-day as defenders, we believe the journey should begin with a shift in mindset, with understanding that the engineering ecosystem has become a big part of our attack surface. Sophisticated attackers are aiming to attack Cicd, and then we need to adopt this understanding into the way we look at our AppSec program and ultimately adopt a different approach to doing AppSec. AppSec today is far beyond just the challenge of securing the code, and it requires kind of an overarching security umbrella over the entire software delivery chain, all the way from code to deployment. And the AppSec program that we built needs to be based upon a very comprehensive mapping of our engineering ecosystem. We need to build to map and understand what our attack surface looks like by building the technical DNA of our environment that consists of all those building blocks that we talked about earlier, both our organic assets and any type of third party that has connectivity to our organic assets. So we're able to understand the environment and look at it from the perspective that attackers are looking at it. Of course, Cicd is comprised of multiple systems, different technologies, but from an attacker's perspective, it's one big attack surface, and any addition of a specific system or a third party or configuration to this ecosystem is just creating more and more opportunities. So we need to be able to look at the environment the way an attacker looks at it, and then leverage this technical DNA that we built to conduct a continuous analysis against the attacker's perspective. Understand, now that we have the full understanding of what our technical DNA looks like, we know all the security settings, configurations, the path to production of the different applications that we're building. We can now take the top 10 Cicd security risks and understand what type of risks our organization is exposed to. And once we're done with this ability to provide a continuous analysis against the attacker's perspective, what we then need to do as defenders is to build and optimize our Cicd security program and make sure that we're continuously tailoring our AppSec program to those risks that we're identifying to make sure that Cicd posture is optimal. And then, of course, just like any other systems that we're building, just like web applications, we have the knowledge, the risks, the controls that inform our posture and the way we build applications. But once we're done and once we think we have everything secure, we need to do a pen test. We need to try and have experienced hackers try to hack those systems with those attack vectors that are specific and bespoke to Cicd. to make sure that the posture controls that we've implemented are actually effective. And of course, in this context, the GOAT and similar projects are very, very useful for actually understanding how to carry out those attacks and how to build the program that enables us to make sure that the controls that we built after we've done the technical DNA and the analysis and all those things we mentioned, that the controls are actually effective. And so this is kind of a short summary of the different approaches and controls that we believe organizations should take to kind of adapt their ways to the new flavor of challenges and risks that CI/CD presents.
Yeah, no, this is a great way to learn the language, so to speak, of this space. So you seem to have it all, the interactive GOAT plus top 10. So yeah, thanks for all the contributions here.
Of course.
Yeah, lots of thank yous in the chat. I don't think there's any more specific questions. But yeah, any last takeaways that you want? How could the audience learn more? I mean, you put up all your GitHub links, but anything you want to leave the audience with?
I mean, first, you can. We definitely encourage you to reach out to our website and to our GitHub organizations, and repos to view, so you can read the top 10 Cicd Security Risks document, which is pretty long, but I think that any AppSec team and any security team in general should be familiar with the contents there, and not just them, also DevOps engineers and software engineers. I think that everyone should be familiar. Everyone which is dealing with the engineering ecosystem in their day-to-day should probably be familiar with this content. And anyone who likes to hack or to have more practical knowledge of this material should definitely just download the Go to your own laptop and try it out. It's really fast to set up. Everything is documented in the GitHub repo. So trying out both of these projects is something that we highly recommend as your next steps. And if you're already there, we would always be grateful for any feedback and any additions to these projects.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of our guiding principles since day one was, like I said, build the technology, but also help the community build the knowledge and have the tools to be better at CI/CD security. And so we have a lot more interesting initiatives coming up, and you know, we really enjoy these engagements. So feel free to follow on our website, social media. We're pretty active over there, and we really enjoy any type of comment, feedback, and discussion around this. And like I said, stay tuned. We have some pretty exciting publications coming up, and we hope this is helpful. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to our audience for joining us, and we will see you all next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.